Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Some massive news coming Wednesday night. Jim Harbaugh leaving Michigan, taking the head coaching job for the Chargers in the NFL. And Dale, as Michigan fans, like you kind of felt like this was inevitable. He wants to go back to the NFL. And it comes back to, for me, like, did Jim Harbaugh leave the Michigan program better than he found it? And unquestionably, yes. In that 2023 season, as a Michigan fan, that is the happiest I've been being a fan in my whole entire life. And I owe a lot of that to Jim Harbaugh and what he's done with that program the last couple of years. Going to be rooting for Jim. Want to talk two things. One, where does this Michigan program stand heading into 2024? Obviously, going to be looking at new head coach candidates. And then, Dill, we'll talk about who are head coach candidates that we would be taking a look at if we're Michigan. And for the Michigan listeners, would love to hear your head coaching candidates in the comment section. And before we get into it, just want to say thank you to you guys, and a special shout out to the Michigan fans. Many of you guys know, I mean, my brother and I, huge Michigan fans. There's nothing we like talking about more than Michigan football. And for those who kind of rocked with the boys all season long, a truly special season in 2023. Cannot thank you guys enough. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel and drop your head coaching candidates in the comment section. Dill, I'm going to give you the T-box here. Jim leaving for the Chargers. How are you feeling?
Yeah, and nothing but love for Jim Harbaugh at this point. Yeah, I mean, if he left last year after that crushing loss to TCU, I'm gonna be honest, I probably feel a little different. I'd probably feel like he quit on that group a little bit. But I think, again, he took that group to the mountaintop. He took the program to the mountaintop. And frankly, I think he's got a really good off-ramp with Sherrone Moore. And I'll just come right out and say it. That's my guy for head coach. I think any Michigan fan who's watched this program develop over the past 3 or 4 years knows Sherrone Moore has probably been right there with Harbaugh as being that guy, and probably Ben Herbert as well as being the guys responsible for this turnaround. So again, I think he's leaving this program. I mean, you couldn't have this every year. I feel like this, like, I want to leave, I might leave, I'm interviewing. I mean, something had to give. Glad he's doing what he wants to do. And again, I think he's left this with a perfect situation with Sherrone Moore. I think he's very ready.
Yeah, in like a weird way, all the allegations that Michigan had to go with and Jim Harbaugh being suspended for that portion of the season, it kind of got Sherrone Moore ready. Kind of, you feel even more confident that Sherrone Moore is the guy, right? Going in as an active head coach, winning some massive games. To me, like it shows Sherrone Moore, I think, earned the opportunity to be Michigan's head coach going into 2024. They'll, even more importantly, and I think you make a massive, massive point. We like to talk a lot about the players, and obviously guys like J.J. McCarthy and Blake Corum, those guys were massive for building this program to where it is right now. But Dill, Sherrone Moore, I mean, when Michigan really started to turn on, I mean, there were some dark, dark days in that 2020 COVID season. And the biggest thing that changed heading into 2021 was the Michigan offensive line. I mean, we just got better along the line of scrimmage. And you look at Sherrone Moore, and he is kind of in large part a massive reason why Michigan is where it's at. So for me, looking at next head coaches, I think it's a no-brainer, because you have the personnel, the culture, everything kind of set up to continue to be a contender. You want to make sure you ensure that. And you have everyone. I got multiple messages from one of my, shout out my buddy, a Michigan State fan, saying, get ready for Michigan guys to hit the portal. You take Sherrone Moore as your next head coach. Michigan State, you ain't getting anyone from Michigan's roster in the transfer portal, because these guys are going to stay and play for Sherrone Moore in 2024.
Again, I don't know. At this point, I think you have full confidence, and I think you're right. Like, when you have continuity, it's not going to be like a Nick Saban situation where he kind of just left and you pretty much knew they were bringing in a whole new staff because they didn't have anything. I think you'd liken it more to like Jimbo Fisher taking over for Bobby Bowden, or even Ryan Day taking over for Ohio State, where those teams really didn't miss much of a beat, because at the end of the day, they'd kind of been planning for it. I'm sure Michigan's been planning for it. I think everybody with a brain knows that he's been kind of kicking this around and it was probably going to happen. And now you have a 40-year-old head coach, I think, who you can have for 20 years, hopefully, and be dominant.
That's probably what's most exciting is if you do give Sherrone Moore the job and he is successful as a head coach, you might be getting a very good head coach for a very long time. And I'm excited to see kind of what, and I want to talk about one other thing is, if Sherrone Moore does get elevated, and I'll give you guys a few names that came to my mind in terms of if we were going to go out of facility for our head coaching hire, I'll give you a few names that would be on my radar. I want Sherrone Moore to be the next head coach. I think a lot of Michigan fans are with that. one of the things I'm most excited for is like, what does recruiting look like? Because I think a decent part of why Michigan has struggled a little bit on the recruiting trail, and struggle is a stupid word to probably use there, but when you have your head coach year after year interviewing for NFL jobs during one of the more important time periods of recruiting, like that is getting hard to sell these guys that, hey, you're committing to a head coach that might not be there. And so now kind of Jim moving on, I think for guys you're selling on the recruiting trail, you can sell a lot more stability. So I'm excited for that. And Dill,
for as good as Jim Harbaugh was about building a culture and building a team, he was never a killer recruiting. I mean, that's not why he was hired. He came over from Stanford. No one recruits at Stanford. You build it a very different way at that program. And then he came from the NFL. So again, there's never really any indication that he could really recruit. As the success got better, again, you didn't necessarily see the rankings go with it. I'm not positive that's not Michigan picking their guys and just thinking like, we're not recruiting the star, we're recruiting the player. You get a Mason Graham, a Kenny Grant, guys who kind of fly under the radar. They look like first round picks. So I don't think recruiting's the end all be all, but I think you're 100% right. When you have a head coach who's pretty much for the last 2 or 3 years indicated that he's kind of up in the air each year, I do think it slows things down. I think it makes it harder to recruit. In the end, you hire Sherrone Moore. I think he wants to be there. He'll be there for as long as they'll have him, and as long as they're good. I think just naturally it gets a little easier to deal with that.
So if that is the path, and from all the reports, that kind of is what it sounds like. Sherrone Moore probably going to be the next head coach for Michigan. Though I think the next conversation is, what does Michigan's offensive coordinator look like? And this is where I kind of get excited. Like, you want to continue the bones of Michigan being that bully along the line of scrimmage. That is what got us to the mountaintop in 2023. But I would be really excited to talk about some new offensive minds coming into this program, because at the end of the day, you look at Michigan, and if Michigan wasn't going to win a national title, it was sometimes that offense getting a little stally and stalling out a little bit. Sherrone Moore is going to have a heavy hand in this offense and the identity of this offense, no doubt in my mind. But it's an opportunity for Michigan to maybe go out and get an offensive coordinator that can throw in some more wrinkles and help Michigan continue to kind of hit those explosive plays. We'll have probably another episode on that in terms of evaluating once it all shakes out. But in terms of Michigan maybe bringing in another offensive mind, I think that's a really exciting proposition for a lot of Michigan fans.
And that will inherently be the interesting thing, because it sounds like Jesse Minter might go with Jim Harbaugh into the San Diego or Los Angeles Chargers, I should say. And that kind of makes sense too, frankly, because I don't think you can keep Sherrone Moore and Jesse Minter. They're both head coach level guys. Jesse Minter maybe takes like that promotion, if you will, to that NFL level. Who knows? I think it'd be hard to keep them both. I think it has to be Sherrone Moore, just given what he's been, just that he feels like the backbone of the rebuild to an extent. But I would be interested to see what they do at the coordinator spots, because frankly, I mean, you talk about some of the guys on the offensive side, like Grant Newsome, Mike Hart. If you don't elevate them to coordinators, they're probably both leaving, right? I think they're both starting to prove that they can be coordinators. On the defensive side, I think that's where it gets a little bit more interesting, where you could possibly go out and hire a defensive coordinator, just because
I don't get another Ravens cat. That's my vote. Like, hey, go to Harbaugh's Ravens team and say, go grab another young incumbent assistant. It's worked for us in the past.
You go to Mike McDonald and John Harbaugh and be like, all right, who do you got? Who's coming up?
Who's the next? Yeah, who's the next guy for this program? That's where we'll talk about that as the news kind of trickles down. As of right now, you don't know if Jesse Minter's coming with Jim to the NFL, but if he is, we'll have another conversation about defensive coordinators, and obviously offensive coordinator. If Sherrone Moore gets elevated, probably bringing in another guy in that sense as well. Dill, this is kind of a superficial conversation, because it's not really the direction I would want to go. I don't think a lot of Michigan fans would want to go in this direction, but if Michigan was wanting to go and grab a head coach, I think Mark Stoops would probably be the guy that makes the most sense. Recruits Ohio very well, has done a phenomenal job with Kentucky. But outside of that, I look at head coaching candidates, and I think when it comes down to this, and I think this is what the Michigan AD and administration should be having conversations. You just saw a team that just continue to get better year after year for the last 3 years, and obviously culminate in being the best team in college football in that 2023 season. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And I think Sherrone Moore played a heavy hand in that progression. So if I'm Michigan and having those conversations, I think Sherrone Moore, one, show that he can be a game day head coach. That's probably one of the bigger conversations was, can he handle that responsibility of being a head coach and not just a coordinator? I think he showed that to a certain extent. And again, Sherrone Moore's young. You're going to have a lot of time to continue to build this program in the right direction. To me, Sherrone Moore,
if they go outside the program and don't hire Sherrone Moore, like, I'm going to be pissed. I'll be as mad as I've been about a Michigan thing since, I mean, hand up, maybe they kept Harbaugh in 2021. It's crazy to say that now, but I wasn't immune to the anger about what was going on after the COVID season. So
that's a phenomenal story. We were multiple times, even after the 2019 game against the boys were at that game, driving home, silence in the car. And Dill just breaks the silence going, Jim Harbaugh needs to go. And I was, I mean, tensions were high in that car. I get it, but that's kind of where we're at. One, extremely happy that Jim Harbaugh stuck with it. The administration stuck with it, gave us the best season of my lifetime. So we'll see where it goes. Jim Harbaugh, love you, buddy. I hope you have a ton of success in the NFL. Like this, we owe a lot.
We're rooting for the Chargers. We're all rooting for the Chargers.
Chargers fan. Now we'll be on talking more about kind of the fallout for this, but wanted to hop on, give you guys some of our opinions on the situation. Again, Michigan fans, cannot thank you guys enough for rocking with the boys. Your support means the world to us. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later.